Roll call, please.
John Clark,
Here.
Scott Tracy,
Here.
Chris Colbert,
Here.
William Gilbert,
Here.
Patricia Griffin, Kirk Martin, Bruce Miller.
Here.
A few notes. Public comment. At the beginning of the meeting, any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on any subject matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Airport Commission and is not on the Commission agenda. Total time for public comment is 15 minutes. If you wish to address the Commission under this item, please complete a request to, do we have any requests?
I don't have any speakers
Thank you.
lists.
Just the notices?
Just the notes. Okay. Excuse me.
Technical difficulties.
Technical difference. Oh, there it is. Copies of reports relating to agenda items are available for view on the Airport Administration Office or on the website. Materials related to an item agenda submitted to the Airport Commission after distribution of the agenda packet are available for public inspection at the Airport Administration Office. And cellular phones and pagers, please turn off cellular phones and pagers. And changes to the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chair. On the consent calendar number 8, under recommendation, the very last line ends with effective December 1, 2012, and that's a typographical error. It should be 2011. Just wanted to point that out, and then we'll note that in the minutes and in the report itself.
Okay, thank you. Notice the regular Airport Commission meeting scheduled for Wednesday, March 21st was canceled. That the Budget Subcommittee met on Thursday, April 5th, 2012 at 11 a.m. in the Airport Administration Building. And Thursday, April 12th, the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board. Excuse me.
Oh, there's the correction to the notice. We also had
To the consent calendar.
the subcommittee met for the transportation. That wasn't listed. For the, oh, my mistake. I was present, but it wasn't our meeting.
It's okay.
Okay, which brings us to minutes. We have a motion about waiving and
I'll make a motion to waive the reading and approve the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, February 15th, 2012.
Seconded.
those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Done. Brings us to the consent calendar, and with the exception of the correction noted in item 8, are there any questions, comments?
I'll make a motion that we waive the reading of the consent calendar and approve as presented and amended.
Second.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Liaison reports. I don't see any liaisons.
I think our liaisons aren't here this evening.
We will pass on that. A subcommittee reports. Lease review subcommittee.
You met on February 2nd?
February 2.
Copy.
We met to discuss subtenant issues on default and non-payment rent issues. And brief the lease review subcommittee on those particular leases, and then report is working. We are collecting on those past due accounts.
Good. Item 12, the administrative report, and the subject being the annual budget for fiscal year 2013.
And Ms. Johns? will
Ms.
read
Johns.
That report?
Thank you. Okay, so tonight I'd like to present the 2013 airport budget for your consideration. And we'll go over sort of an overview of the department, some financial, the revenues, the expenditures, some of our programs and activities. And then I'd like to address also the changes that we're making, proposing to change both revenue-wise and expenditure-wise in the 2013 budget. And then just touch on some performance measures, the highlights of those.
Oh, sorry.
Dana.
Can't even do that job.
Obviously, Airport Commission knows, but for the benefit of the public, the airport is an enterprise fund of the City of Santa Barbara. We're self-supporting. We do not receive general fund subsidy, nor no tax dollars come to the airport. Our revenues are generated from our activities, tenant rents and user fees. And by federal law, the revenue that is generated on the airport must be used for its maintenance, operation, and capital improvement. We have 8 programs or 8 divisions in the airport that covers management, maintenance, and operations. This graph allocates staffing by those programs, and we have a total of 53 full-time employees. An overview of the financial airport fund. When we put the budget together more than a year and a half ago, we made some assumptions, and assumptions are always fun to make. We projected that we would be in the new terminal by June of 2011. We were in August of 2011. We also said that passenger traffic would be flat, that commercial industrial leasing would be stable or increase, and general aviation revenues would probably also increase for us. Unfortunately, that assumption on passenger traffic didn't hold. And this chart gives you our history from 2007 of actual. 2012, we're projecting a little more than a 7% decrease. We're hoping to get 350,000 passengers this year. And for 2013, we've added 11,000 passengers, going up to 361,000 passengers. So we are off from prior years for sure. Parking has been adversely impacted by the decrease in passenger traffic, and construction has really impacted our parking lot. We have about 10% decrease in the number of parkers, but more importantly, we're about 24% under budget in parking revenue. We're being very optimistic in 2013, hoping that once the whole project for the airline terminal is completed, we have short-term parking back, we have the obstructions of the mounds of debris and whatever removed, that we will entice our parkers to come back and park at the terminal. We did have some significant issues that I mentioned when we talked about our mid-year budget adjustments that we made earlier this year, like in February. Policy reserves for the airport. This is a recent verified number, and it comes from the new accounting manager in the finance department. You know that the city council has required reserves, and they've had that for, I'd say, 18 years, 20 years. About 25% of our operating budget is set aside for economic uncertainty and for future year budgets. The capital fund or the capital reserve is an average, a 5-year average of what the airport has used in its own money for capital improvements, not federal grants. So as of June 30th or July 1st of 2000, the beginning of the current budget period, we had a little over $4 million in policy reserves. In addition to that, we had $2.8 million in reserves above policy in Fund 441. That's our operating. So there was all capital funds of the city, not just the airport, but all capital funds of the cities. The finance department conducted an internal audit. As a result of that audit, discrepancies were identified in several capital funds, the airport being one. And the discrepancy was within individual projects. And part of that is because of encumbrances in the way that the accounting system handles an encumbered contract. And each capital project stands alone, not within a category. We have a handout that Mabel provided you that shows you kind of a quick look at the operating fund and also the capital fund. And if you take just a moment to look at that, you'll notice on the first page, which is it should say at the beginning, this is airport administration operating budget. You'll notice in the right-hand column where it says remain year-to-date, you'll notice under, well, first let me tell you that each, how do I want to say this? The budget's divided up into object codes. The first object code is salaries and benefits. The second one is materials and supplies. Within materials and supplies, as an example, you'll have separate line items for different items. It could be utilities, it could be buying paper for the copier. You'll notice that in the right-hand column, you have some negative numbers. But if you look at the total under supplies and services under remaining year-to-date, on the right-hand side, it says $117,026. So at the end of the fiscal year, when the budget closes on June 30th, those negative numbers will disappear because finance will do an adjustment and they will offset the negatives to make it zero. Because the funds are there, it's just a line item has been overdrawn. And currently that's an acceptable procedure through the city, through purchasing. The second sheet that you have is a copy of part of the airport's capital fund. This one happens to be for the resurface program. And you'll notice we have streets, we've got a boundary landscape program, a terminal long-term parking lot, infrastructure maintenance, Batella Road parking. So you have each one of those line items is a project. Each project has its own budget. So if you were to go over on that particular project, then you need to get additional appropriations. What had not transpired for the various capital funds of the city is that when an overage was done, additional appropriations were not made, and so the negative balance was carried forward from year to year. In the airport situation, we had 2 or 3 projects that exceeded the budget and had been carried forward for a period of 5 years when the internal audit was conducted. And at that time, we had a shortfall in those particular projects of $1.8 million. At no time did the capital fund ever go to a negative balance. We always had money, it just had not been appropriated to cover that shortfall. So we worked with the finance department to develop a strategy on how to account for the $1.8 million. as well as fund some capital obligations that occurred at mid-year. And those projects at mid-year, we, as you know, we're a member of the Goleta Sanitary District, and they're doing a plant upgrade. And that's been ongoing now for several years, but they have a contract for construction, and we needed to appropriate additional funds for this project in the amount of $767,000. Another one was the Goleta Slough mitigation. When we had the airfield improvements that were done extending the safety overrun area, we had an obligation to maintain the, it was mitigation, wasn't it? Yeah, the mitigation for the wetlands. That obligation is a 7-year period. Federal funding provided the funds for that mitigation for 3 or sometimes 3 or 4 years of the total of 7. Those grants expired, so the obligation fell to the city, to the airport, to pay for the balance of those, the mitigation project. So we needed to allocate $551,000 for the mitigation contracts. The airline terminal, because of timing differences with federal grants that we were receiving that had been obligated in our capital program to the FAA, they were slow in coming. And so the airport operating fund pre-funded some $538,000 in expenses that will be reimbursed with FAA funds. And we have recently been told that we will be getting a grant of almost $800,000 to cover the last phase of the terminal project, which will certainly reimburse the airport for this $538,000. Some new projects that we needed in order to complete the terminal project. Our automated parking equipment hasn't always been as reliable. I was thinking trustworthy. Reliable as we would like. And at first we thought we would do away with the kiosk, but we found that we really do need to have a person on staff there in case of customer service issues or just that the equipment doesn't function. So we're putting in a new parking lot kiosk in the short-term lot. This was not known 3 years ago, and it was not included in the original plans for the terminal project. And so we need to fund this particular project as well for $120,000. And then we needed to purchase the parking lot equipment, the automated equipment that is consistent with the 2 long-term lots, and that's estimated at this time about $250,000. And the last project is building demolition. We have a couple of buildings on the airfield, not on the airfield, but on the airport, that are uninhabitable and need to be removed. They're becoming a health and safety issue. So we established a budget for that as well at $130,000. Now, going back to the budget, this chart gives you information on our actual revenues for 2011, the amount that we stated in the adopted budget. Once again, we have adjusted the adopted budget with our projections for 2012, and then also what we're recommending for 2013. You'll notice that we're about $500,000. Well, the adopted budget for this year is $14.9 million, but we're anticipating receiving $14.5 million in revenue. And then 2013, it's $14.7 million. Salaries, this is our operating expenditures, including transfers out. And transfers out include our debt service obligation, as well as some other expenses. So for projected budget for 2012, we're looking at $14.3 million versus the adopted budget of $15.1 million. And in 2013, we're recommending $14.7 million. The next slides provide you a summary of where those adjustments are taking place. Commercial industrial, on the revenue side, commercial industrial continues to be a strong revenue source for the airport. So we anticipate getting about $175,000 more in rent than we budgeted. Same thing with non-commercial aviation, that's GA traffic, primarily landing fees and fuel flowage fees. Unfortunately, at the terminal, we're going down $460,000. Keep in mind, the terminal is all the concessions, parking, rent-a-cars, food and beverage. Interest. At this point, we're anticipating it's going to be below our target, and that all is because of the investment policy of the city and the market. So we're looking at a total of $203,000 less in revenues than we projected. This just gives you a little bit more detail on each one of those changes as to why they were made. Rental car and parking at the terminal, those are the two that are really below, parking in particular. Rental cars are actually positive. Parking is $500,000 negative. On the expenditure side, we've also made some adjustments because we have to stay within budget. And we've made some adjustments to salaries and benefits. And one of the questions at the budget subcommittee dealt with salaries and why there was an increase, even though we were not getting cost of living adjustments. And it was indeed, we have 12 employees that are, the city, each employee position has 5 steps in their salary range. And we have 12 employees in the department that are still eligible for step increases, and that makes up the difference. Excuse me. Supplies and services, we're suggesting that go up $106,000 in the 2013 budget. Allocated costs are up. Part of that is because the redevelopment agency was disbanded, or yeah. And the overhead allocation that had been assigned to redevelopment has been redistributed to all of the other departments in the city. Special projects, we eliminated a special project and transfers out. That's primarily money that we had previously budgeted for the capital program that we're not doing. And then appropriated reserves would be under. So we're looking at $530,000. The staffing changes, there were 3 of those. One, we took the maintenance coordinator in the maintenance department, reclassified that to an administrative specialist, with saving us some dollars. We deleted the airport marketing coordinator, and we have 1 project planner position where the individual has been out on medical leave, and we anticipate that that leave will expire between now and July. So we will hold the position, but it will not be funded. Under facility maintenance, the increases with the new terminal, we're maintaining a variety of new systems, elevators, escalators, boarding bridges, PA systems, all kinds of systems. And so we needed to increase our budget for that. Water, we're really doing pretty good on usage, but Goleta Water District has a rate adjustment, and we need to accommodate that. Our janitorial expenses are less, and this was interesting because of those polished concrete floors. You don't use the same chemicals, or you don't polish with wax and soap. So we've saved money there, and then we had some other minor adjustments on each line item. Transfers to other funds. In the T-Hanger fund, when we built the T-Hanger several years ago, we realized that we would have to subsidize the debt service. But each year we make a transfer over, but this year we have a little reserve there, so we only have to put in $18,000. Capital outlay, we're not going to be funding capital this year. And then our performance measure highlights. not a lot here, but just under administration, we want to go to council, airport commission, and other boards with an update on the master plan on a quarterly basis. We've established new benchmarks to measure at the terminal for food and beverage and the gift shop. Marketing, we want to increase the number of visitors to our website and Facebook and Twitter, our social media. The maintenance program, with the new terminal and with increased number of staff in the custodial division, we're really focusing on kind of really integrating them into the department because of their hours and in the separate location. They really have sort of been out of sight, out of mind, and now we really working to bring them into to the fold, as they say. Okay, and then preventive maintenance for the custodial efforts. Air operations, of course, they're focused on taking care of the airfield. There's going to be some crack seal projects, and surface painted signs will be repainted. Security, this is important, developing an operating manual for the badging office. That's really important. In facility planning, even though we don't have an airport-funded capital program this year, we do have the master plan that's going on. We have a goal to submit the airport land or layout plan to FAA by the end of next summer, a year from summer. Complete the design, permitting, and construction of 3 taxiways, and also design and bid security operations center relocation. This time we'll answer any questions that Airport Commission may have, and then hopefully get your recommendation on the 2013 operating budget. And
Thank
as
you.
we mentioned, the Budget Subcommittee did meet. They did go over the budget in quite a bit of detail. And additional information was requested, and that is being compiled to come back to Airport Commission.
Questions? Well, I'll just start by saying I think we all have a lot of faith in your ability to manage your budget. You do a tremendous job of doing that and meeting that. Certainly, this newest revelation is not what we expected. And, as I said, I think we have a lot of faith that you can navigate that and make any sort of mid-year corrections that are necessary. But I know that the Budget Subcommittee would certainly like to see probably a larger margin over where you're operating, particularly in light of the debt service. And I think Mr. Colbert, Commissioner Colbert, I think has a lot to share his feelings on the topic.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I, like all of us, were surprised at not at the performance of the staff, but at the situation. A couple things that should that I recall being told what had occurred here. This was not the only enterprise fund that this happened. This is something that's systemic. And this is not the first time that it's happened either. This happened 5 years ago.
Yes.
So obviously the process is broken. And so our role here as an advisor to the City Council is, we have a fiduciary responsibility to report what occurred. It's obviously documented here. I'm satisfied that the staff has done their utmost to address this shortfall. This is certainly isn't their fault. They're operating with the information that's provided. But if I were in the administration, if I was the City Council, I would ask the following. This was the result of an internal audit discovery, not an external. And there is an external auditor, as I understand, who has charge of auditing all the books. And I'm not a government accountant, nor am I a government employee. I don't pretend to understand all the nuances here. But what I have asked in that subcommittee and would recommend to, if I were in the city council, if I'm paying for an external auditor, I'd like to have a report on how this occurred. I'm paying you, what happened? Two, I'd like to see a very simple diagram on how this whole process works, because this is, frankly, a lot of mumbo jumbo to me. The city staff has worked countless hours to try to address this shortfall at a very bad time. And I realize that the water department, I forget the other department, has the same situation. Everybody's stepping up to the plate. But so we're talking about a breakdown, a process that isn't well understood or is not transparent, to me at least, on how this occurred, and what is being done about it for the future. Make sure this doesn't happen another 5 years from now. This is a significant amount of money that is going to be borne on the backs of this department and its employees. Again, good money is being paid at the tune of $1.5 million to City Hall. There's sufficient money there to at least address these issues. I'm not grandstanding here, but it upsets me greatly that it's taken 5 years for this problem to be identified. That's it. I'll get off my high horse.
Thank you.
And that was all done without a four-letter word.
Do you doubt the number? I mean, you're asking for an audit or for another audit?
I'm not asking for an audit. I'm asking for the auditor to explain how this issue was not identified during 5 years. That's what they're paid for, is to audit. It's a significant amount of money.
Mr. Chair?
There should be a contra account that for every debit or credit, there ought to be an offset. And this just does not make sense to me.
Have they, in their finding of it, have they said a reason already and published it?
Well, you talked to the finance department about how the city external audits are done, and I don't think you spoke with the finance department, so you can explain that better, but also how it happened. I mean, as opposed, or set aside the audits or whatever, I think there was a misunderstanding between the departments on how the line items in a object or fund are accounted for. It's different in the operational budget than it is in the capital fund. Now that's crystal clear, and then that's our responsibility for the situation. And then on the finance department, not getting accurate information in regards to that issue, or bringing it to our attention that we had a misinformation about how that was accounted for, is their part. Now there's a new accounting manager. The finance director is aware of what happened with the previous person who's no longer with the city, who allowed that to go on and on. And we're aware of what the correct accounting procedure is. So I think that there is, that has been corrected for the future. Obviously, it's very painful to have to come up with $1.8 million that we hadn't counted on. But in real life, that's kind of how it occurred. You can talk about the city external audits.
When I talked with the accounting department about the external audit, I was told that they do a broad overview of each fund, and that they just pick certain items to test. In all cases, all of the airport's different funds had positive balances. At no time did the airport or the other city departments or enterprise funds have negatives. It was always a positive cash basis. The accounting procedures were just not clear-cut. And part of that, as we mentioned too, has to do with the way contracts are encumbered and funded. So, but as Karen said, I do think that we fully understand the difference between the operating budget as well as, and now the capital program, and which way we need to account. And if we need to appropriate more funds during a project, then we will go to council and have more funds appropriated by project.
The commissioner made a statement that I wanted to make sure that wasn't really misinterpreted. You said something to the effect of money going to City Hall. And I think it's important for everybody to understand that these were funds that were expended on airport projects. And the issue really, as I understand it, resulted from the fact that those projects exceeded their budgeted amount, and basically the account balance was not decremented to reflect that. So this is not money that's going to City Hall because of something City Hall did. It's basically the accounting did not keep up with the activity. And you know, one of the fundamental issues there again is that I mean, these were projects that did go over budget. You know, it's very difficult to, you know, to in some cases predict exactly where a project is going to come in when you've got, you know, some fairly substantial projects. And this was an accumulation of 5 or 6 projects, I believe you mentioned.
5 or 6 over 5 years.
Over 5 years. So, you know, 100,000 here, 100,000 there, it starts to add up. And, you know, you've explained to us that you now have mechanisms in place to kind of, you know, manage your own balances as you believe they are. You know, I think that having those mechanisms in place really to keep projects in check are kind of important as well. I mean, that's still, it's 1 point something million over on projects in 5 years. You know, maybe that, and I'm not sure what the overall capital expenditure over that same 5-year period is, and what percentage this is within, you know, the overall capital. But I think to most people, you know, 1 point anything million is a lot of money, even spread across 5 years. So, you know, I think it's important for us to, you know, focus on what are you doing to keep that in check, and, you know, how this can best be prevented. It sounds like you certainly have a much better understanding now, and hopefully the city does as well. But it certainly has a, you know, big impact, even on operations at this point. As I said, I think we have a lot of confidence in your ability to manage to your budget. We would certainly, and I think we expressed, we'd certainly like to see your kind of plan B. Right now, you've got a balanced budget. You know, we would want to be sure that you have those contingencies in place should, you know, passenger counts continue to decline, should you lose a large tenant, and those types of contingencies. And I'm sure you've already got some of those already lined up, and I look forward to sharing some more of that information with us in the future. I think everybody would like to avoid any surprises, particularly the people that work here.
Exactly.
I understand that this is also a city problem, that their budgets and stuff are hit by the same 5-year plan, or 5-year problem.
Well, it occurred with other enterprise funds. Generally, the city's capital program is pretty minimal. The general fund's capital
Yeah,
program.
I meant that this audit problem affected them also.
Yes, it did.
So I'm sure they will get, they'll get straightened out. I just hate to see, get too involved in rehashing it if the numbers are good, which I believe at the moment are. Not, excuse me, I don't mean by at the moment, but are, and we have to concern ourselves with, hopefully the world keeps moving to where we meet our projections. That's my only concern, is that FAA or somebody will not give us their grants. There's something will delay it even longer, and that costs us more money, but that's perhaps. Thank you, though, for this.
Thank you.
So we're tightening our belts, and there's 2 staff positions that have been reduced or eliminated. And I was wondering if you could talk about what you're going to do in with the marketing coordinator position not there anymore. How is that going to be handled?
We had 2 positions in the marketing division. We had the marketing coordinator, and then we also have Lynn Houston, who is a marketing assistant, and she has been or will be reclassified to not an airport marketing coordinator, but a marketing coordinator. So it would be an increase for her. She's very talented and can certainly accommodate what we need. In addition to that, because of the new terminal and the new look that we have also entered into a contract with an outside marketing company, and they will assist us with coming up with some branding and some ads, some commercials, that type of thing. So we'll be working with them as well. So I think overall we'll have it covered.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Do we recommend that it go forward? I make a motion, we recommend that it be presented and go forward with it. The budget for 2000.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would second the motion.
Okay, those in favor of recommending approval, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
We'll also forward your comments as well as just with the
Please.
actions.
And if I may,
Sure.
just wanted
Go
to
right ahead.
add on the comment here. My comment was not that the $1.5 million that's being appropriated downtown was going to disappearing. It's going to general administration. I'm just shocked at I'm not shocked at the fact that our systems are antiquated. I think all large organizations are faced with that challenge, and this is a complex little city. But, what I still don't understand is how 5 years ago, I'm sure people were saying the same thing, and I don't want to be here, I won't be here 5 years from now. But I don't want to be that guy or gal who's sitting here. I want to make sure that this is addressed in all the departments and at the administrative level as well. Thank you.
And I agree. I think that has been corrected. I mean, it's on our part as well as the finance department, so.
Thank you.
Which brings us to the director's report.
Okay, the controversial part of the agenda.
Yes.
Our passenger count for March was down 7.1% compared to March of 2011, making our year-to-date count down 1.5% compared to the same period last year. It's hard to see when one month we have an increase and the next month we have, it's kind of unexpected to have such a big decrease, but we had a lot of flight cancellations.
42 cancellations.
And most of them were San Francisco? Or
Some, 37, I think, for San Francisco. Uh-huh.
So anytime the weather is bad up there, they go down to, one runway, and then that really messes up the whole system, so.
A delay is okay because of the concessions, but cancellations are no good.
Yeah, so maybe our concession revenue went up.
We could hope.
If they got them past security. Just as a reminder, on June 4th, Alaska Airlines will start their Portland service, so that should help, boost our passenger use during the summer. And hopefully, we understand that pre-bookings are very strong, so hopefully that will continue, and we can show that we, have the demand for that service. The master plan, on March 28th, we held the second advisory committee meeting, and the consultant went through the inventory and forecast that they have been preparing these months. And then we had a workshop that evening where about 25 members of the public came, and I thought it was a very good workshop. People really seemed engaged and asking a lot of questions at the various stations around the room. We had displays from the inventory and the forecast. And we had people from the GA community, we had airport neighbors, we had airport tenants. So I was very pleased at the turnout, as well as just that people were so engaged in discussing and talking and asking questions. I think that was a really productive thing. And KEYT showed up and interviewed Hazel and some of the people attending. So also on our website, there is a link to the master plan, and we have a master plan website itself, but you get to it through flysba.com. And all the reports, the PowerPoints that were presented to the committee are all on our website, so anybody from the public can look and read the materials and familiarize themselves with what the latest stage is of the planning. And they're free to email questions to us or write questions or call us with questions or comments. So I think we're off to a good start. And, it's just the very beginning. The inventory and forecast really set the stage for, what the inventory is, what's the status of our facilities now, and the forecast is what kind of use are we going to have in the future, whether it's passengers, aircraft operations, and what was the third thing that they based it on? Passengers? Cargo. And from those forecasts is where you start developing what your facility needs are in the future. So I think it's pretty exciting, especially for general aviation, in terms of new facilities for the future. And let's see, terminal project. The historic terminal is moved and on its new foundation, and they've been working away at it. We had one issue come up with the stucco. We have a very small section of the original stucco of the building that's still on it, and the rest of the building will be re-stuccoed. So we went to the Historic Landmarks Commission and asked that we not have to preserve that small section of stucco, because it would really, the integrity of it butted up against the new stucco, we'd have leaks, and it just would not be a good situation. Plus, it would be covered up by the new stucco. So they agreed that we didn't have to preserve it, but they wanted to see a sample of what the new stucco would be, the technique, because they want the technique to be the same as was applied on the original building. So we have a little delay in the project just to get that taken care of, but that's what you work through when you're dealing with a historic building. So anyway, we're on our way, and so it may be, I don't know exactly the length of the delay yet. Our engineer is going to let me know. Probably by next month we'll let you know what kind of delay we're going to have. But otherwise, everything's going pretty well. And that was all I was going to report on. If you have any questions about other items that are on here, I'd be happy to speak to them.
I don't hear anyone.
We're still on the agenda for the May 4th for the naming.
May 1st is
Excuse me.
the,
That's right, that's Tuesday.
right, Tuesday, May 1st, your recommendation to City Council regarding the naming of the terminal will go to City Council. I don't know where that is on the agenda yet, so I can't tell you approximately what time it might come up, which I will let you know. And if you would, any of you would like to attend and speak or just sit and listen, we'd love to have you there. The next day, May 2nd, we will, at 9 a.m., 9 a.m., we'll be giving our budget presentation to council. And again, any of you that would like to attend and speak or just listen, we'd welcome you to be there too. And I think that's it.
I would like to say I'm very pleased and very proud that somebody has written a nice book on our airport and what the history is, Karen. I'm hoping to get down, I think it's the Tecolotti bookstore. I forget the day, I've got it pinned on my
I think
icebox.
it's June 23rd. or
And
something.
get a signed copy of it, but I congratulate you on it. It sounds like a tremendous thing. I've always personally been interested in that area, as I did have some friends that were stationed there. And some of the tales they told, I'm trying to see if they show up in your book.
Yeah, primarily the book that I researched with Michelle Nellis and are the aviators, local aviators that died during World War II that our streets are named for. And then there's some additional young men and one woman that are on our memorial who didn't get a street named after them because there weren't enough streets. So it was a fascinating 2 years after our memorial was dedicated, researching 49 people. I thought, how long could it take to research 49 people? Not that long. You're right. I spent 4 months in front of the microfilm machine at the library looking at news articles and stuff. And Michelle did a lot of research too. And amazingly enough, a number of their families still live in town. And even those out of town found out that we were doing research and contacted us. So she was able to interview several of them. So it was a very gratifying project for me. I've always wondered, who are these people that our streets are named after? And and I learned more about World War II than I ever learned in school, just by researching the different battles that they were in or theaters of war that they were in. It's pretty amazing people. So anyway.
Looking forward to that. Anything else?
Go ahead.
Do we have a
Motion to adjourn.
yes?
Second?
Adjourned.